Sorry about that, babe.
The Lufia series is one that I do remember as a kid. I didn't actually own the games back then. I remember downloading them and playing them on an emulator in like the mid to late 90s. I was always intrigued by them, but my horrible attention span as a kid, I was never really able to get around to them until recently. So I recently did a playthrough and unboxing. I'll link those in the pinned comment description below. But I also wanted to talk about the game a little bit more in depth. Lufia and the Fortress of Doom is a JRPG that was developed by Neverland and published by Taito, released in North America on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System on December 4th of 1993. This is the first title in the series, albeit not the first on the actual timeline of in-game events, but I guess that's better saved for another video. Story and stage is set fairly well with an opening cutscene and a playable flashback sequence to start the game. A massive floating island with a large castle one day emerged in the sky. This place was known as the Fortress of Doom. Inside said fortress were powerful evil beings known as Sinistrals who, much like many other foes in the realm of fantasy, wanted to take over the world. In order to deal with this, people of the world sent 4 brave warriors up to slap the Sinistrals right in their grills. The success of the battles was short-lived, as tragedy quickly strikes and you are then fast-forwarded 99 years into the future on the brink of the revival of the Sinistrals. And you know how I do at this point, I don't like majorly spoiling the plot in my reviews, and I find that Lufia actually has a fairly engaging one, so beyond that, just sit back and enjoy. Right off the bat, you will likely be enamored with the graphics and color palette of the game. It's fairly engaging and vibrant. The hero and NPC sprites have almost a chibi style to them, and many of the in-battle enemy sprites are sights to behold. The same could also be said for many of the dungeons and towers, which possess eye-pleasing color palettes as well. Although at the same time, you will notice many reskins among both enemies, dungeons, and towers, but luckily since they are well done, it shouldn't irk you too much. The gameplay of Lufia in the Fortress of Doom is fairly standard. Most of it revolves around town exploration, world exploration, dungeon diving, tower climbing, and battling. While in towns, you sprint around or are able to purchase items, weapons, armor, rest up at inns, save your game at the town clerics, or converse with the NPCs. I have to get this out of the way very quickly. I find that surprisingly, Lufia has some very engaging dialogue. Sure, at times it does lack towards the middle of the game, which by the way, in general lacks, not just with the dialogue. But there's plenty of interesting, well-flowing, and funny things said throughout the game in both your party speak as well as general NPCs. Considering many times translations come over a bit rough, I do feel like on the whole they did a pretty dang good job when it comes to the in-game dialogue. Contrasting with the sprint-like town exploration are the tortoise crawls that plague the overworld, dungeons, and the towers. This is definitely a game that would have been better off with a sprint button, or at the very least, just maintain the same speed that your characters have in the towns. I do understand that this is basically a way of artificially lengthening the game, but with an immense encounter rate, it can be a bit of a chore. Yes, you can offset this with Sweetwater items, which does lower your encounter rate, or smoke balls, which allows you to retreat from battle, but even the most veteran of RPG goers will be annoyed at some point with the encounter rate and the slow slog of your party through treacherous areas. The battle system is fairly standard. It's not active time battles like that of Final Fantasy IV, rather a traditional style which allows you to really think and plot your next move. You have the ability to attack, defend, use an item, use magic, or retreat while in battle. However, one major thing to note is that there is a weight system involved with the game, and your agility is very important, at least I think so. The more you are weighed down, and the lower your agility, and the more likely it is that your enemies will outturn you. Now, I can't say for certain that weight actually has weight, as I do know back in the day there were many bugs with a lot of games, but from what I can tell in my playthrough, my tankier characters, such as the hero or Guro, definitely seem to move quite slow in comparison to my magic users and that of Lufia and Jaren. A major plus on the scorecard for Lufia is the soundtrack. Composers Yasunori Shiono, Aki Zaitsu, and Naomi Kuroda did a bang-up job. Whether it's the town OST that will be stuck in your head for ages, or epic romps such as the Fortress of Doom theme, there's rarely a dull moment with this soundtrack, as even the more minor tracks such as In the Ocean still help the atmosphere in a great way. And very briefly, the controls are kind of what you would expect. No platforming involved and generally safe across the board, and other than some lazy clicks during battle, the battle menuing is also pretty easy. However, I will admit that menuing when out of battle can be a bit tricky. It's incredibly easy to use spells or items more than you would like, or continuously be on the wrong person, or even kick yourself out of the menu altogether when trying to swap around, so just be careful. Now for some likes and dislikes that are kind of yin and yang, as well as a pretty big dislike that I do have for the game. Lufia, as mentioned, has pretty good dialogue. As such, the game itself is very engaging and keeps you wanting more. That being said, I find that the beginning and the end of the game are way more engaging than the middle. Oftentimes through the middle of the game, Lufia seemed to be kind of on rails with specific almost, fetch quests. While they did advance the story, they really didn't move the needle, and there was almost next to no mystery as to what you were supposed to do. It's really hard to explain, but if you play, you'll most likely understand what I mean. I will admit at one point that I was actually starting to get concerned if the game was just going to go into the shitter, but thankfully the last third of the game or so was very engaging and kept me wanting more. I also happen to like the layouts and dungeons of the towers. None of them are too complicated, while sticking some warping type gimmicks in here and there along with lever systems to keep things fresh, but I totally could understand people not liking the almost endless dungeon crawling. There were a few instances in the dungeons that I kinda was just like, alright, let's get this over with. But honestly, I didn't have that many issues with them. That being said, the aforementioned encounter rate is atrocious. This could also lead to many more headaches while sloth footing to the top floor of a tower. But the ridiculous encounter rate does have its rewards, because you will be needing to do plenty of grinding in order to succeed. Yes, quite possibly, my least favorite part of the game essentially is 100% necessary grinding that is needed to beat the game legitimately. Reason being, the bosses have insane difficulty spikes, but not only that, my favorite thing in all of the JRPG realm, the bosses, and many late game enemies, are huge fans of status conditions. Oh yes, so much joy to be had. In order to counter these scenarios, you have to be at a good level and also know specific spells such as the boost to heal the entire party, or something like mirror to reflect the onslaught of awful magic that's going to come your way. If you go into certain battles without certain spells, all I'm gonna say is good luck. Unfortunately, I found myself needing lots of grind sessions towards the final third of the game, but I did manage to get myself to a point where it certainly did pay off, and you do have the ability to get some free levels in the form of dragon eggs, which is a side quest of sorts. You find a set of 8 dragon eggs, turn them into the dragon shrine, and you can redeem rewards, which I personally found the 2 level up to be the best set of the rewards. Although it may seem like a big chore, it's not as bad as described, and many of the good aspects of the game help even things out in a big way. While I did hear that Lufia 2 Rise of the Sinistrals is way better, I got some massive enjoyment out of Lufia and the Fortress of Doom. After some deep reflection, I give Lufia and the Fortress of Doom an 8 out of 10. Even though there are many sloggy and sometimes downright unfair aspects to the game, the graphics, the soundtrack, the dialogue, the first third, and the last third of the game are good enough to overcome those issues. If you're a Japanese role-playing game fan and haven't played this yet, I certainly do recommend it. I am very excited to get to Lufia 2 sometime this year, but until then, if you've enjoyed this review, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing if you haven't already. I do my best to reply to all comments on all videos, and I'm interested to see what you guys think of Lufia and the Fortress of Doom as well. Until next time.